It was late at night inside the quiet control room of the James Webb Space Telescope. Most of the scientists had gone home. But a young researcher named Daniel stayed behind. He liked the silence of the lab, the way the machines hummed and the screens glowed in the darkness. The telescope was scanning deep into space, searching for galaxies and stars billions of light years away. But that night, something appeared on the screen that made Daniel freeze in his chair. At first, it looked like a small dot, just another distant object drifting across the Black Sea. Of space, he almost ignored it, but the readings were strange. The object was moving differently, not like a comet, not like an asteroid. It was too smooth, too steady, and too fast. Daniel leaned closer, his eyes wide, his heart beating faster. He whispered to himself, "What are you?" He tried to measure its size, and the numbers made his stomach twist. The object was massive, larger than any mountain on Earth. It was not round like a planet, not jagged like a rock. It had edges, straight lines, almost like it was built. He called his senior, Dr. Alina, who rushed into the room with a tired face. Daniel pointed at the screen, his voice shaking. Alina's eyes widened as she adjusted her glasses. She did not speak for a long moment, then finally whispered, "This cannot be natural." Her words hung in the air like a heavy shadow. The two scientists ran more scans. They checked the instruments again and again, but the readings were clear. Something enormous was drifting toward Earth from the dark side of space. It was not a rock, not a star fragment, but something unknown, something that did not belong. The telescope captured more images. The shape was becoming clear, was long and curved. With a strange metallic reflection, Daniel's hands shook as he printed the first photograph. Alina locked the door of the control room, her face pale. "Do not tell anyone," she said firmly. Not yet, but Daniel could not stay calm. He felt a deep chill inside, as if the object in space was watching him through the screen night after night. The telescope tracked its movement. It was moving faster now, shifting its course directly toward Earth. The silence in the lab grew heavier with every passing hour. Other scientists began to notice unusual data. Whispers started spreading in the hallways. Some thought it was just a glitch. Others said it must be a hidden satellite. But Daniel and Alina knew the truth. This was no satellite. This was something humanity had never seen before. One night, the telescope recorded something even stranger. A faint signal came from the object, a repeating sound. Beep, pause, beep, pause. It was not noise, it was a pattern, almost like a message. Daniel's hands trembled as he listened through the speaker. The sound echoed through the room, sharp and alien. Alina looked at him with fear in her eyes. "It is not random," she whispered. "It is speaking." Neither of them knew what it was saying, but they both felt the same dread. The weight of the discovery pressed on them like a storm. If the truth came out, the world would panic. Governments would demand answers. The public would demand safety. But there were no answers. And there was no safety, only a shadow in the sky growing larger every night. Daniel began to dream about it. He saw the structure in his sleep, floating silently, blocking out the stars. He woke up sweating, his heart racing. Every morning when he returned to the lab, the object was closer. The fear in his chest grew heavier. Like a chain pulling him down, Alina started writing reports for the higher authorities. She tried to keep her tone calm and professional. But between the lines, the fear was clear. "Unidentified structure detected," she wrote. "Trajectory toward Earth unknown." Her words were short, but the silence around them screamed. Days turned into weeks. The object grew closer and clearer. Its surface shone like metal, smooth and sharp. No crater, no dust, no signs of nature. It looked like it had been built. Piece by piece, by hands not from Earth, Daniel stood in front of the giant screen one night, staring at the glowing figure. He felt like a child looking up at a monster he could not fight. He whispered again, "What are you?" But the silence gave no answer. Behind him, Alina sighed heavily and said, "Daniel, if this is real, humanity may not be ready." Her voice broke in the middle of the sentence for the first time. Daniel saw tears in her eyes, the strongest. Woman in the lab was afraid, and if she was afraid, the world should be terrified. The discovery was no longer a secret, was a curse. In the heart of the night, the telescope continued its watch. The strange structure moved slowly, patiently, as if it had all the time in the universe. Every light in the lab flickered, as if even the machines felt its presence. Daniel and Alina sat in silence, two humans staring at the unknown, realizing that their world was about to change forever. The nights grew longer inside the control room. The strange object continued to move closer to Earth, and now it was no longer silent every few hours. The telescope picked up a faint sound. It was not static, not noise from the stars, but a repeating signal, a pulse of energy that seemed alive. Daniel sat at the console, headphones pressed to his ears, his face pale, his lips trembling as the sound echoed, beep, pause, at first. He thought it was just interference, but the pattern was too perfect, too deliberate. Dr. Alina entered the room. Carrying a stack of reports, she froze when she saw Daniel's expression. "What is it now?" she asked quietly. Daniel handed her the headphones without a word. When she listened, her hands shook, her eyes narrowing with fear. "It is not random," she whispered, her voice barely more than a breath. The sound repeated again, filling the silence of the lab. Daniel leaned forward, his eyes wide. "What do you think it means?" he asked. Alina shook her head slowly. "I do not know," she said, "but it feels like a message." The word message echoed in Daniel's mind like thunder. If it was a message, then someone or something was sending it. And that meant the object was not just strange, it was intelligent. The team ran tests on the signal. They checked the frequency, the rhythm, the strength of the pulses. It almost resembled a code, like numbers hidden in sound, but no computer could fully break it. Every attempt ended with the same haunting pattern. Meanwhile, the object continued its path. It was no longer a distant light in the sky. Even amateur astronomers began to notice it. Photos and blurry videos spread online. People called it the silent visitor, while others whispered darker names. Governments around the world tried to keep the truth hidden. They claimed it was space junk or a harmless asteroid. But Daniel knew they were lying. The signal was too real, too sharp, too dangerous to ignore. And it was getting stronger every day. Late one night, the signal changed. Daniel nearly jumped out of his chair when he heard it. It was no longer a simple pulse. This time, it rose and fell, almost like a voice. He stared at the screen in disbelief, his body shaking. "Alina," he shouted, "come here, quick." She rushed in, her eyes tired but alert. They listened together as the sound filled the room. It was eerie, almost human, yet not human at all. Like someone trying to speak from across a great void. The scientists recorded every second. They played it back again and again. Alina pressed her hands to her face. "I think it is speaking to us," she whispered. Daniel felt his chest tightened. "But what is it saying?" No one could answer. Specialists from other countries were brought in secretly. They worked day and night, but the signal remained a mystery. Some thought it was a warning. Others believed it was an invitation, but one word kept appearing in the data prepare. Daniel stared at the decoded fragments. The letters glowed on the screen, chilling him to the bone. Prepare for what? He wondered. Was it a warning of danger or a promise of destruction? The more he thought, the colder he felt. The world outside began to notice the fear. Whispers turned into rumors. Rumors turned into panic. People claimed to hear strange sounds. On their radios, others said their phones picked up the same beeps. It was as if the message was reaching everyone, not just the scientists. Religious leaders declared it a sign from the heavens. Conspiracy theorists screamed that it was the end of the world, but to Daniel, it was none of those things. It was something far older, far stranger. And it was coming closer every day. One evening, the control room lights flickered. The signal grew so loud it shook the speakers. Daniel covered his ears, but the sound pressed into his skull. For a moment, he thought he could hear words, whispers. In a language that was not human, Alina slammed the system off. The silence that followed was even worse than the noise. Daniel gasped for air, his hands trembling. "What if it is not trying to talk?" he whispered. "What if it is trying to control us?" Elena's eyes darkened. She said nothing. But her silence was an answer in itself. The signal had power, not just sound. It carried something deeper, something that reached into the mind. The thought made Daniel shiver. The strange structure in space glowed faintly on the telescope screen, like a silent giant watching them from the darkness. The signal pulsed again, softer this time, as if it knew they were listening, as if it was waiting for them to respond. Daniel looked at Alina with fear in his eyes. "We should not answer," he whispered, but deep down, he knew someone, somewhere, eventually would. And when that day came, the truth would no longer be hidden. The world would face something it had never faced before. The news finally leaked. A blurry photograph from an amateur astronomer spread across the internet. It showed the strange structure shining in the night sky, bigger than a star. Within hours, the image went viral, and the world erupted in fear. Governments tried to deny it. Officials gave calm speeches on television, calling it space debris or an unusual asteroid. But their voices shook. Their eyes betrayed the truth. The people were not convinced. They could feel something was terribly wrong. In cities around the globe, panic began to spread. Markets crashed, food prices doubled overnight. People lined up outside stores, buying whatever they could canned. Food, water, batteries. Some prayed in churches, mosques, and temples. Others filled the streets with protests, demanding the truth. Daniel watched the chaos unfold on the screens in the lab. His stomach twisted as he read the headlines. Unknown object approaching Earth. NASA silent on strange signal. Is this the end of humanity? He turned to Alina, his voice low and heavy. "They are not ready for the truth," he said. Alina's face was pale, her eyes dark with worry. "They were never going to be ready," she replied. Her voice cracked with the weight of her words. The signal continued to pulse stronger every day. Radios across the world began picking it up. Even cheap old radios caught the same strange rhythm. Beep, pause, beep, pause. People recorded it, shared it, and filled the internet with questions. Was it a warning, or was it a countdown? Religious leaders declared the sound was divine. Some said it was God returning. Others said it was punishment for humanity's sins. In one city, thousands gathered in a stadium, chanting prayers into the night sky. In another, riots broke out as people fought for supplies. Military forces across nations moved into action. Bases went on high alert. Jets filled the skies. Missiles were quietly prepared, hidden from public view, but Daniel knew none of it would matter. This was not a human enemy. This was something else. One morning, a secret video was leaked. It showed close-up images taken by a classified satellite. The object was not a rock at all. It was smooth, metallic, with massive walls and strange glowing lines. It looked like a machine. The internet exploded with fear. People screamed online, "It's a ship." Others wrote, "It's coming for us." Governments tried to shut down the video, but it was too late. The truth had spread to every corner of the earth. Daniel sat in silence, his hands cold as ice. He whispered to himself, "We cannot stop it." Alina stared at the glowing screen. Her lips pressed tightly together. She wanted to argue, but deep down she knew he was right. Humanity had no defense. In small towns, families abandoned their homes. They drove to the mountains, the deserts, the forests, hoping to hide. In big cities, fear turned into chaos. Streets filled with fire. Shops were looted. People screamed. In the night, it was as if the world had already ended. News anchors tried to stay calm, but their voices trembled as they read reports of violence. Airports were crowded with people trying to escape, but no one could say where they should go. There was no safe place anymore. Daniel could not sleep every time he closed his eyes. He heard the signal in his dreams. Beep, pause, beep, pause. It was like a heartbeat. The heartbeat of something not human, and it was getting louder. Alina studied the data late into the night. Her face grew more tired with every passing day. "We cannot hide this anymore." She finally said, "The world deserves the truth." But Daniel only shook his head in silence the next day. Leaders of powerful nations held a secret meeting, but secrets could not last in a world already on fire. Whispers from that room spread quickly. Some leaders wanted to attack the object. Others wanted to communicate with it. The divisions grew. Deeper armies prepared for war, while scientists begged for peace. People on the streets shouted, "Fight back!" Others cried, "Welcome them." The world was breaking apart before the object even arrived. In the lab, Daniel stared at the telescope screen. The structure now appeared massive, casting a strange light across space. It was close enough to make the stars around it disappear. He felt his throat tighten. His breath shallow. "It is watching us," he whispered. Elena's eyes filled with tears. She reached out and touched the cold surface of the monitor. "Then the question is," she said softly, "are they coming as friends or as predators?" The silence after her words was louder than the signal itself. That night, across the globe, billions of people stared at the sky. The object now glowed faintly to the naked eye. Children asked their parents what it was, but no parent could answer. No one could hide the fear anymore. The world waited in terror, waiting for the object to reveal its purpose, waiting for the message to be fully understood, and waiting for a future that might never come. The panic was only the beginning. While cities collapsed in fear and nations argued, some people turned away from the noise. They did not trust the governments. They did not trust the media. They trusted only their instincts. Among them was a man named Adam, living on the edge of a small town. He had always been quiet. The kind of man who listened more than he spoke when the strange object was revealed. To the world, Adam felt something deep inside. A heavy warning that whispered to him, "You must prepare." He remembered the signal. The strange sound repeating again and again. Beep, pause, beep, pause. It echoed in his head every night. Adam did not wait for answers. He began collecting food, water, and tools. His small cabin filled with cans, bottled water, ropes, knives, and batteries. His neighbors laughed at him at first, calling him paranoid. But when the panic grew worse, they stopped laughing. One family knocked on his door, begging for advice. A woman with 2 children asked if he believed the stories were true. Adam only nodded and said, "Something is coming, and we cannot stop it, but we can prepare." His words were calm, but his eyes were heavy with fear. Soon, others began to follow his example. A small group formed around him. They were ordinary people, teachers, farmers, mechanics, and mothers. They had no weapons of power, no grand machines. Only courage, fear, and the will to survive. Together, they made a plan. They packed supplies into trucks and drove toward the mountains. Far from the chaos of the cities, far from the burning streets, the road was dangerous. Filled with desperate people, Some tried to block their path, some begged for help. Adam's group gave what they could, but they knew they could not save everyone. At night, they camped under the stars. The object was visible now, glowing faintly in the sky like a false moon. The children asked, "What is it?" No one gave an answer. They simply told them to sleep, though no one truly could. Among the group was a young boy named Liam. He carried a small notebook, writing everything he saw. One night, he showed Adam a drawing. It was the structure in the sky. "With sharp lines and glowing lights, it looks alive," the boy whispered. Adam felt a shiver down his spine. He looked up at the object. Its silent presence seemed to watch them. Not like a star, not like the moon, but like an eye. Alina and Daniel, still in the lab far away, studied the signals endlessly. But Adam's group did not wait for scientists. They built shelters in the forest, gathered firewood, dug wells. Every day was filled with work. Every night was filled with fear. Some wanted to believe the object meant peace. Others whispered it meant war. Adam kept his thoughts to himself, but deep inside, he felt the same truth Daniel had felt. "It is watching us," he thought, "and it is waiting." One evening, the group sat around a fire. The flames flickered. Shadows danced on their tired faces. A woman named Clara spoke softly. "My son asked me if the world is ending," she said. No one replied, because no one knew. Adam looked at the frightened faces. He realized survival was not only about food and water, it was about hope, about keeping the group together. If fear destroyed them before the object even arrived, then nothing would matter. He took a deep breath and spoke. "We do not know what is coming," he said, his voice steady. "But we will face it together. We will protect our children. We will fight if we must, but we will not give up." The firelight reflected in his eyes, giving strength to the group for the first time in days. They felt a small spark of courage, a fragile light in the darkness. The days passed slowly. Each sunrise brought the object closer. Each night made it glow brighter. The signal still pulsed in radios and devices. Some claimed they could hear words in the noise. Others said they dreamed of voices calling their names. Adam too began to dream. He saw flashes of strange landscapes, skies filled with unfamiliar lights. He woke in sweat, gasping for breath. But he kept his fear hidden from the group. They needed him strong, even if he was breaking inside. One morning, Liam, the boy, pointed at the sky. "Look," he said, his voice trembling. The object was larger now, clearly visible in the daylight. It shimmered with unnatural light. Even the birds in the forest had grown silent. The group stood in silence, staring upward. No one spoke, no one moved. The world seemed to hold its breath. Adam felt the earth beneath his feet tremble. The truth was undeniable. Time was running out. That night, Adam wrote in his journal, "If this is the end, then we will face it as humans, together, not as cowards, not as enemies, but as survivors." He closed the book and stared at the fire until it died. Above him, the strange structure floated in silence, its presence growing heavier, its shadow stretching closer. The survivors waited, not knowing if tomorrow would bring salvation or destruction. But in their hearts, they knew one thing. The world they once knew was already gone. And the real test of survival had only just begun, the day the object entered Earth's orbit. The world fell silent. For weeks there had been panic, shouting, and endless chaos. But when the massive structure finally appeared in the sky, all noise seemed to stop. No one needed a telescope anymore. It was visible to the naked eye, hanging above the planet like a second moon. Children pointed at it with wide eyes. Old men dropped to their knees, praying with trembling hands. Mothers held their children close, whispering comfort they did not feel. Even the animals reacted. Birds circled restlessly. Dogs barked at the air. It was as if the entire earth felt The weight of the arrival, Daniel stood in the control room, staring at the live feed. The telescope had captured every detail. The structure was no longer just a blur of light. Now it was clear, a massive, smooth wall of shining metal stretching endlessly. It looked alive, though it moved with a silence more terrifying than sound. Beside him, Alina whispered, "It is not drifting anymore." Her voice shook as she pointed to the data. "It has slowed down. It is holding position." Daniel's breath caught in his chest. That meant only one thing: it was watching. News channels around the globe broadcast the sight in real time. The object filled the skies of every country. Some called it the Gate. Others called it the Silent God, but most simply called it the Ship, for it no longer looked like anything else in the mountains. Adam and his small group of survivors saw it too. They gathered outside their shelters, staring up in horror. "Liam." The boy clutched his notebook tightly. "It is bigger than the sky," he whispered. Adam put a hand on his shoulder, but he had no words. The object did not move. It hung above Earth like a predator studying its prey. Then, faint lights began to spread across its surface. Tiny dots of blue and white, moving like veins of fire. The sight was beautiful and terrifying in the cities. Crowds filled the streets. Some cried, some cheered, some simply stood frozen. Church bells rang, sirens wailed, but none of it mattered. Everyone was staring at the same thing. The sky was no longer humanity's own. Military forces worldwide pointed their weapons at the heavens. Jets roared across the skies. Missiles stood ready on launch pads, but none dared to fire, because deep down, they knew any attack would be as meaningless as throwing a stone at a mountain. In the lab, Daniel replayed the signal again. Beep, pause, beep, pause. It was stronger now, almost deafening through the speakers. He swore he could hear a rhythm inside the sound, like words hiding just beneath the noise. Alina pressed her headphones tighter. Her lips moved as if she was repeating something she heard. Daniel froze as he watched her. "Alina, are you all right?" he asked, but she did not answer. Her eyes were glassy, her face pale when she finally pulled the headphones off. She gasped for air. "It said something," she whispered. Daniel leaned forward, his heart racing. "What? What did you hear?" he demanded. Her voice cracked. It said, "We see you." Daniel staggered back in shock. For a moment, the world seemed to tilt. The signal was no longer a mystery. It was direct communication. The object knew they were listening across the world. Power grids began to fail. Lights flickered. Entire cities plunged into darkness. Phones and radios picked up the signal without any devices connected. The same haunting rhythm filled every corner of the Earth. It was as if the ship itself was speaking to the planet. In Adam's camp, the survivors huddled around a small radio. The children covered their ears as the beeping grew louder. Clara, the mother, cried silently. Adam clenched his fists, his jaw tight. "They are here," he muttered, his voice trembling. Then the sky changed. The structure shifted, revealing its scale. From its surface, massive panels unfolded like wings, each one glittering with alien light. The ground beneath trembled as if Earth itself could feel the movement. People screamed as shadows fell across entire regions. The panels stretched wide, blocking the stars. Some thought it was preparing to land. Others thought it was preparing to destroy, but no one knew the truth. Daniel pressed record as the lights blinked across the ship. The signal grew louder, deeper, more complex. He turned to Alina, his face pale as snow. "It is building to something," he whispered. She nodded, her lips quivering. "Yes. It is about to speak." In that moment, the entire Earth seemed to wait. Billions of people staring at the sky, their hearts pounding, children crying. Soldiers gripping weapons, scientists holding their breath. The silence before the storm was unbearable. Then the signal stopped. The world held its breath for the first time in weeks. There was no sound, no pulse, no noise, just silence and then light. A beam of blinding brilliance shot down from the structure. It struck the atmosphere, with a glow brighter than the sun. The ground shook, windows shattered, people screamed. But the light did not destroy, it simply spread, covering cities and forests in a strange glow. It was as if the entire planet had been marked. Daniel's heart raced as alarms rang in the loft. "In lobby, Alina," he shouted. "This is not random." She clutched her chest, her voice breaking. "No. It is choosing." Her words sent ice through his veins. In the mountains, Adam shielded his eyes. The glow covered the forest, painting the world in ghostly white. The boy Liam whispered, his voice thin, "They see us now." Adam's stomach twisted as he realized the truth. The arrival was not the end. It was only the beginning. The structure had come not to watch, but to act, and whatever it planned for Earth. The planet could no longer escape. The beam of light did not fade quickly. It stayed, stretching across the skies, painting Earth with a pale glow. People all over the world stared upward, frozen in silence. It was not fire. It was not destruction, but it was something worse. It was a mark. Daniel sat at the console, his hands shaking as the instruments screamed with data. The signal had stopped, but now the computers were filled with strange patterns. Lines of numbers and codes that made no sense. He printed the data and shoved the papers at Alina. "Tell me what you see," he whispered, his throat dry. Alina studied the numbers, her lips moving silently. For minutes, she said nothing, only staring. Then her face drained of all color. Her hands fell to her sides as the paper slipped from her fingers. "It is language," she breathed. "'Tis speaking to us." Daniel felt his stomach twist. "What does it say?" he demanded, her voice cracked, shaking with terror. "It says, prepare. The harvest begins." The words filled the room like poison. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The hum of the machines was the only sound. Daniel's hands trembled. As he pressed them to his face, "Harvest." He whispered, "What does that mean?" But deep down, he already knew. Around the world, scientists began to decode the same message. Different labs, different nations. But the words were always the same. Prepare. The harvest begins. Governments tried to keep it hidden, but it spread. Like fire, soon the words filled the internet, the newspapers, the streets. People screamed in terror. Some believed it meant crops. Others thought it meant the oceans, but most understood the truth. It was not food, not resources, not the land. It was humanity itself, in the mountains. Adam and his group of survivors huddled together. The glow from the sky bathed the forest. In ghostly light, Clara held her children close, her voice shaking. "What do they mean by harvest?" she asked. No one answered, but the silence told her everything. Liam, the boy, scribbled in his notebook. He drew figures falling from the sky, people reaching upward. When Adam saw the page, his chest tightened. "It is us," he whispered. "We are the harvest." The words made the others shiver. That night, the signal returned. At this time, it was not only sound. Screens across the world flickered on their own. Phones lit up, radios buzzed without power. And across them all, the same chilling phrase appeared. "The harvest begins," over and over. Glowing letters burned into every device. It was not a warning anymore. It was a promise. Daniel slammed his fists against the desk. "They are not just watching, they are coming," he cried. Elena's hands covered her mouth, her eyes wide with terror. "They planned this," she whispered. "They have done this before, somewhere else." Her words sank into Daniel like knives. If they had done it before, it meant Earth was not the first. And it meant Earth would not survive across the planet. Strange phenomena began to occur. Fields of crops wilted overnight. Rivers darkened with a strange shimmer. Animals grew restless, running in circles, fleeing into forests. Even the air felt heavier, harder to breathe. It was as if the earth itself was being drained in Adam's camp. The survivors woke to find the sky glowing brighter than ever. The stars were gone. Hidden behind the massive structure above, shadows rippled across the land as lights moved along the ship's surface. Clara clutched her children tighter, whispering prayers into their hair. Adam stood frozen, watching the heavens with dread. Liam tugged at his sleeve, his voice shaking. "They're starting," the boy said. Adam's chest tightened. His fists clenched. He wanted to deny it, to tell the boy it was all a mistake. But the truth was too clear back in the lab. Alarms blared as the ship released smaller objects, thousands of them, breaking away from the structure like sparks from a fire. They moved with precision, descending toward Earth in perfect formation. Daniel's voice cracked as he shouted, "They are not waiting, they are here." Alina grabbed his arm, her face pale. "This is the harvest," she said, her words trembling. The screen showed the craft spreading across the planet. Cities, forests, oceans, nothing was safe. Every place on Earth was marked. People screamed in the streets. Some ran, some prayed, some simply collapsed in despair. The world had no defense, no escape, for the first time. Every human being understood the same truth. They were prey. Adam gathered his group. His voice firm, though his heart shook. "We stay together," he said. "No matter what comes, we." "Stay together," the children cried. The adults clung to hope that felt paper-thin. The forest around them glowed as the smaller crafts entered the sky above. The harvest had begun. Daniel stared at the data with hollow eyes. He felt as if he was drowning in silence. The truth was heavier than anything he had ever known. This was not exploration. This was not communication. It was extermination. And as the first alien machines touched Earth, humanity realized the most terrifying truth of all. The object had not come to meet them. It had come to take them, and nothing would ever be the same. The harvest had begun, all across the world. The smaller crafts descended, dark shapes blotting out the skies. They moved like swarms, silent and precise, their metallic forms glowing with unnatural light. Every city, every village, every hidden place was touched by their shadow, and humanity realized there was no escaping. In New York, entire towers shook as beams of light cut through the streets. People screamed, running in every direction. Some vanished in the glow, pulled upward like dust in the wind. Others collapsed as strange machines crawled across the ground. The invasion had no words, no mercy, only silence. In the lab, Daniel stared at the screens, his face pale with horror. He watched as live feeds from satellites captured the chaos. Cities burning, oceans boiling with strange movements. Forests consumed by light. Alina stood beside him, her hands pressed to her mouth, her eyes wet with tears. "This is not war," she whispered. "This is harvest." Daniel slammed his fists on the desk. "Then we fight," he said, his voice raw. Alina looked at him with disbelief. "How do we fight something like this?" she asked. Daniel's voice broke. "We fight because we must, even if we lose." Governments unleashed their weapons. Missiles flew into the sky. Fighter jets roared through the clouds. Explosions lit the heavens, but the ships were untouched. The crafts moved like shadows, weaving through fire as if it meant nothing. Humanity's strongest weapons were useless. In the mountains, Adam gathered his survivors. The glow of the crafts filled the forest with ghostly light. Clara clutched her children, whispering prayers. Liam held his notebook close. Drawing the machines in silence, Adam gripped his rifle, though he knew it would change nothing. "We will not hide," Adam said firmly, his voice steady. "We will stand together, whatever comes." The group looked at him with fear and hope mixed in their eyes. They were not soldiers. They were not heroes. They were only people who refused to surrender. The first craft descended into the valley below. It was massive. Its surface covered in glowing veins of light. Strange machines dropped from it, crawling across the earth like insects. Their movements sharp, inhuman. Without pause, the survivors held their breath. Watching from the trees, one of the machines turned. Its glowing eye scanned the forest. Adam raised his rifle and fired. The bullet sparked harmlessly against the metal, but the machine stopped, as if it had noticed. It turned fully toward them. The survivors gasped as beams of light shot through the trees. Adam shouted, "Run!" They scattered into the forest, branches breaking, feet pounding against the soil. The harvesters followed, relentless, silent, unstoppable. Back in the city, soldiers fought bravely. They threw everything they had against the invaders' streets. Filled with fire, the air filled with smoke, but every victory lasted only seconds. For every machine destroyed, 10 more descended. Daniel sent desperate messages to anyone still listening. Find shelter, avoid the beams, stay together. He wrote, but even as he typed, he knew the words were weak. He turned to Alina, his eyes hollow. What if this is the end? He whispered. Alina gripped his hand tightly. Then we face it together, she said, her voice shaking. For a moment, Daniel felt strength in her words, not because they had hope, but because they had each other. And sometimes, that was enough. To fight, in the mountains, Adam's group stumbled into a clearing. The harvesters closed in, their glowing eyes scanning every shadow. The children cried, the adults trembled. Adam raised his rifle again. Though he knew it was hopeless, he stood tall, his voice fierce. You will not take them, he shouted. The machine paused. Its light flickering for a moment, Adam thought. It understood. Then the ground shook as more ships filled the sky. The harvesters moved closer. Liam clutched Adam's arm, his small voice trembling. Is this the end? The boy asked. Adam looked down at him, his heart breaking. No, he whispered. This is only the beginning. His words carried strength, though inside he felt only fear above the earth. The massive structure pulsed with light. It glowed. Brighter than the moon, brighter than the sun. Every pulse sent waves of energy across the planet. Machines moved faster. Beams grew stronger. The harvest spread wider. The world was drowning in silence and light. Daniel looked at the screen one. Final time, the message flashed again across every system. The harvest begins. He closed his eyes, his voice breaking. No. It has already begun. The skies burned with alien light. Forests glowed, oceans boiled, cities crumbled, humanity fought. Screamed, prayed, but none of it mattered. The earth was no longer theirs. The final stand had begun, and as the strange structure loomed above, pulsing with endless power, the only question left was not how long humanity would fight, but whether anyone would survive to tell the story. The silence grew deeper, the light grew brighter, and the truth was terrifying, beyond imagination.